Welcome back. My next guest is John Rossi, a U.S. Navy and Army veteran from the Korean and Vietnam era. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
So, John, thank you for being our guest. As you know, on this segment, we really like to focus on a local veteran and talk about their experience so we can kind of make sure that we're highlighting the role that veterans have played within our community and certainly highlight their service. So, John, you have a unique situation because you have both active duty service and reserve service. You served in both the Navy and in the Army. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. Before we get to that, maybe we can talk a little bit about your background. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in the Bronx.
What part of the Bronx?
The Parkchester section,
Okay.
White Plains and Tremont Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a very unique. It was a metropolitan life insurance housing project. It was the first one they ever did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you were born down there, lived down there. Where'd you go to school?
I went to public school, of course, and then I went to the School of Industrial Arts to become an artist.
Okay.
Yeah, that school was on 51st Street and Lexington Avenue in Manhattan.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your military service. So you were born in the Bronx, in the Parkchester area. Eventually went on to the School of Industrial Arts. How did you get involved, get into the military?
Well, when I graduated from high school, the art school, there was some people in the community that belonged to the Naval Reserve up in Fort Schuyler.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked to several of us, my buddies and stuff, to join. So we joined them, and we would go to meetings once a week, and then once a month, and then we'd have 2 weeks of training.
Mm-hmm.
We went up to Michigan for one of the naval bases up there to train, and then when we went on a couple of times. We went for 2 weeks cruises, and the one time, which was the last time I did, was a naval escort. We were up outside of Greenland, and we had a tremendous storm.
Mm-hmm.
The ship almost turned over, and everybody aboard ship was so sick.
Wow.
And I decided I got to find something else. I'm not going to be a good Navy man. So then the military government had come up with this program in the Army for 6 months training of active duty, and then you had 6 years of reserve time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I and a couple of my friends, we joined at that time. And what happened was that 6 months, the boot camp was in Fort Jackson, North Carolina. It wound up being a whole battalion of New York boys. It was very unique, and then half of them at that time, when we graduated from that, we went to Fort Belvoir to become light engineers, and we all kept together.
No,
it was unique.
So tell me a little bit about. So you were 6 months active duty, right?
Yes.
First, so tell me about that active duty.
That active duty time in 6 months was mostly in Fort Belvoir.
Okay.
They trained us with different light engineering jobs.
Okay.
And then on Saturday morning, we would put on displays for congressmen and foreign dignitaries showing the different equipment that was coming up.
Okay.
Landing barges, tanks with platforms that would drop across ravines and stuff like that.
Okay.
Building bridges and stuff.
Okay.
That's what we were training for all the time. It was always to give a display every Saturday morning. And then after that, in the afternoon, we were on leave until Monday morning to show back up. It was like working a regular job.
Okay. All right. And then, so you served for 6 months, and then you What happened?
Then it was released from the excuse me, was released from the 6 months. We reported back home and went back to our jobs, which was in the advertising business for me, becoming an artist. We would go to our monthly meetings at Fort Tilden, and then during the summer would be 2 weeks of training again.
Right.
And there was a light engineering battalion, and we were never, in both wars, we were never called up to active duty.
Okay. So you're considered a Korean War era, because I think that goes up to 1955.
Right.
And a Vietnam War era, because I think that started
From
around
57.
from 57 on.
So, yeah.
because of your reserve service. So
Right.
you were in the reserves first with the Army.
First with the Navy.
First with the Navy, right.
And then after the 4 years, this program came up that the government had of the 6-month train of active duty, that you wouldn't, excuse me, you wouldn't be called up for the two years of Army's regular Army time.
Okay, right. So then you then shifted over. You shifted over to a different branch of the service, though, right? And what was that service like? That reserve service like for you?
It was good. It worked out very well for me because I was able to be in the military service and doing my duty for the country, and being able to go out and work in my field of advertising as an artist and stuff. So it worked out very well that way.
And your total length of time, you had 6 months active duty and then about 9.5 years of reserve duty?
Yeah, yes.
And kind of more in the Army than the...
It was more in the Army time. It was six years of the reserve Army and 6 months of that training.
And you were
time.
So where were you primarily during those 6 years with the Army, in terms of your reserve duty?
With the Army was the 6 months of down at Fort Belvoir.
Okay.
And then the rest of the time was here in New York in Fort Tilden, going to the reserve meetings.
Right. Okay.
And then when the Camp Drum in the summertime, and Camp Smith we'd go up to.
Right, in Peekskill.
In Peekskill,
Right.
yeah. But very little there, because that was mostly a National Guard unit.
Now, Fort Tilden is in the Bronx?
No, that's Long Island.
Long Island, okay.
Yeah.
In Long Island, okay.
Right.
And so you were kind of assigned to what? More engineering type?
Yeah, light
tasks?
engineering. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
In the Army.
And they taking care of generators and building small houses and putting up quick Quonset huts, and then the other stuff was out in the field, laying out bridges, barge bridges that floated in the water, or ravine bridges that went over culverts and stuff like that for the tanks and trucks to go over.
So John, so after your reserve duty is finished, I mean, you kind of built up a career. Let's talk a little bit about what your career was outside of military service.
Well, while I was doing the military reserve time, I got jobs in advertising, the gray advertising, and I was there for many years. I worked my way up from being a junior artist to a full-time type designer and ad designer.
Okay.
And then that was like 30 years I was there.
Okay.
And then I met a couple of guys that were artists that wanted to form our own studio. And we had a studio, full-time, full-service art studio for 12 years.
And where was that located?
That was all down in Manhattan.
Great.
We used to commute from here, from the Congas down to the city, go to Tarrytown, take the train down, and then get off and walk to 51st Street and Lexington Avenue, where our studio was, and the agencies all were in that area.
So you would do kind of, I guess today's equivalent would be like graphic design?
Graphic designers. Yeah. I was working until the gray hair showed up and the computer showed up. And the agency started to hire guys and gals out of school that had graphic design backgrounds for the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried it for a while, and then the gray hair showed up, and
Right.
you got to be young in the advertising business. And
Right.
I left. Then and I formed a studio
Mm-hmm.
with these two fellas, and we were able to do some work for a couple of years.
Good.
Then that closed up,
Mhm.
and now I have my little woodworking business,
Right.
doing my little houses and stuff.
Right. Yeah, which is really great. I mean, you put together some really nice commemorative type pieces that are very reasonable for people.
Yes.
We've gotten a number of them here in the town as
Right.
well.
Right.
So, and we'll show some photos, during this.
I have one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you have one there. Let's see it.
This was
So this is the Elmwood
Playhouse
Playhouse.
with the new addition on it.
And so this is basically, you design it, it's made out of wood, and you can do wood or composite material as well,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And pretty much has like the identifying information. It's a great way in which you can commemorate things. You can do, and you'll do it for all types of things. I know just recently you did some stuff for the town. I know when we redid our 9/11 monument,
Right.
you did a couple of those for us. You see these types of things as well in some of the local stores as well, right?
Yeah, I have 6 stores that take my stuff. I have over 650 buildings
Okay.
around Rockland,
Mhm.
Orange County, Bergen County, and over in Westchester.
Right.
Yeah. I've done the historic houses. The one on was it Demers Mill Road,
Mm-hmm.
that was converted. Was there vacant for many years and was rebuilt by the Lennon cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, and I did the Berkey house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely a market for this, and if folks are interested in getting in contact with you, to commemorate a landmark or a building, or a sign, because you've done those as well, how do they get in contact with you?
My email address is ljrossi02
Mm-hmm.
at AOL.com.
So LJ Rossi at
02
02
at AOL.com.
AOL.com. And, it's a great opportunity. It's lovely to see how you've really kind of brought that full circle, and you're continuing to create some beautiful things, for us within the area. So, John, that's about all the time we have for today. I want to thank you for being a wonderful guest. I want to thank you for your service to our country. 10 years, 6 months active duty, but total of 10 years overall. In the reserves as well, both the Army and the Navy. So, who do you root for in the Army-Navy game?
I stand in the middle.
You stand in the middle. But
Right.
it's that game will be coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
But John, thank you so much. And if folks are interested, you can reach out to John via email at ljrossi02 at AOL.com. John, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And thank you for being such a great
Thank you
guest.
very much.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.